All right, welcome back and thank you very much for staying with us. Well, it has been a busy day in the markets, and of course we're keeping track on how the JSE has been performing and looking at the South African currency against other international ones. And we're also going to take a roving view around bosses throughout the world, and we're going to get analysis on the markets as we are joined now on the by via Zoom by Owen Nkomo, who's Chief Investment Officer at Inkunzi Investments. Thank you very much for coming through, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. I really appreciate it.
All right, let's just start with the weakening of the rand when we focus on how it has been performing and now going to the 15 rand level. What could be this a little bit of an anticlimax all about?
Yeah, so the markets, today the markets have relatively performed decently, but it's under a difficult environment. And if you look at the currency, the currency you think is weakening, but it's not doing as badly as some of the major markets currencies are against the dollar. And that being said, I mean, the rand actually is also, still in that 15 range, sort of 1480 to 1530 range. It doesn't seem to be weakening, even despite the decline in some of the indicators that need to be getting the rand to trade softer than where it's trading. So I do think actually the rand is not doing so badly after all. The US dollar is at risk of coming under more pressure because I don't think that the continued printing of money in America is going to favor the American market in the long run. And as far as inflation is concerned, yes, inflation at the moment is not a big threat, but I do believe that things can't continue this way forever.
And like talking about the U.S., the stimulus that's been announced by Biden, how is it going to affect the whole economic scenario of the United States coming out of the administration of Donald Trump and moving on?
Yeah, so there's a two-pronged angle there when you talk about the general markets. The markets last year had a very decent year. The markets pushed aggressively, driven by the technology stocks, and we were happy about that. But whether or not the technology stocks are now valued fairly relative to where you should be buying 1 rand or $1 of earnings out of the technology stocks remains to be seen, and I think it's highly debatable. So I think that the stock markets generally have to pull back a little bit from where they are. I think they're overbought. And we're hoping that Joe Biden is going to bring more, is going to be consistent in terms of the changes that he needs to make in the market. We cannot have Joe Biden coming in and destroying everything that Donald Trump did, just like Donald Trump destroyed everything that was done by Barack Obama. We're hoping there'll be consistency, there'll be a continuation of the previous policies, and I hope, for the sake of the markets and the economy, I hope that a consistent message is going to continue to be plugged into the economy.
So coming back home and still referring to inflation, it has been benign, but when one looks at the food prices, they have really gone up exponentially, and fuel prices have also increased. So which direction should the Reserve Bank take to stimulate the economy while lockdowns are a pain in the neck for businesses?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I looked in the markets in the morning. The price of oil was trading $1 away from $60 US, and that's a big concern. And we just recently had a fuel increase of about 80 odd cents in the country. And I think if the rand does weaken and we continue to see the price of oil at close to $60, we might get another 80% increase next month. And that's to talk about inflation. But as long as the rand doesn't weaken aggressively, I do believe that we are not exactly in a very bad spot. We need to continue to make sure that we don't do any silly, we don't make any silly decisions as a country that will make the rand, fall victim to the vicissitudes of the rest of the markets. We need the rand to be stable, and we need the government to continue with policy implementation, and we need the right reporting to be done. But if we get a weak currency and we get an increasing price of oil, I think that the Reserve Bank might start to think differently about when they'll start actually increasing the interest rates. I don't see them cutting interest rates any further from here. I think they also want to see how the post non-vaccine environment of COVID given that we've got vaccines now. I think everyone wants to see how the country performs. Do people go back to work, and do they start working, and does productivity increase? And if productivity does increase, then I think we'll look at things differently, Colin.
Now, just very briefly, today is the last trading of alcohol sales, and this actually speaks into the peak demand of such beverages on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. How does this really speak much into the alcohol industry in as far as productivity and profitability is concerned, given that they need to come from the downside to break even before they can even speak about profitability?
Look, I mean, the guys that drink alcohol, they are very happy to have had the ban lifted, and been in meetings and restaurants. I see people ordering wine and they're having fun. But I think what remains to be answered, in my humble view, is whether or not it's the right decision for us to unplug the alcohol ban at the stage. Are people going to behave themselves? Are we also going to suddenly have a double-pronged challenge of having fuel being sold out there in the restaurants, and at the same time having an increase in the number of people that are in hospital because of COVID? Because COVID hates the bulk conglomeration of people. They become super spreaders in a way. So I really think that as much as the alcohol industry is going to benefit, we still need to discuss or rather we still need to see if selling alcohol back to people again is going to work for the country, or we're just actually cycling backwards. I certainly hope we're not cycling backwards, and I think it's a tough balancing act for the president to decide to say, okay, do we let alcohol get sold again? How much risk is it posing on the medical system in terms of pressure for the frontliners? But one does hope we have struck the right balance, particularly because we've got vaccines that have been delivered from India, and hopefully we're getting some vaccines from China as well, and maybe from the rest of countries in the world, Colin. Still a lot of a guessing game, but I think that so far the president and his team have not done a bad job in terms of managing the risk.
Right, and more so that, the infection rate has really gone down. But like you are saying, that is a guessing game. We will keep on monitoring the infection stats and see how they move from 2,000 to 4,000 per day, as of course one will look at the median there. But thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the Chief Investment Officer at Inkunzi Investment there, Mr. Owen Nkomo.